So guys, I kind of did a thing. I kind of wanted to start that off with like the millennial pause and like the clickbaity YouTube kind of video vibe. But anyways, I did in fact do a thing. The thing that I did was take an MSF course, which stands for Motorcycle Safety Foundation course. What the course essentially does is you go to like a range, just like a parking lot or whatever, at like a community college, or you go to a Harley Davidson dealership and you have, riding coaches there teach you stuff about motorcycles, whether you've ridden for like 20 plus years or you've never touched or seen a motorcycle. Hopefully you've seen one by this point. But anyways, either way, this course is for anyone. I will go ahead and say I would 100% recommend it. It was so fun. The primary reason I took the course was because I've been like in love with motorcycles for like the past 2-ish years or whatever. I've always had an interest in them because they're so cool. They look so cool. They are so cool. And I was like, because they are so cool and I want to have a motorcycle in the future, what I need to do prior, because when motorcycles and like biker talk started to get big on TikTok, I was like, oh my gosh, I really have to have a motorcycle now. Anyways, I learned that there's like a class you can take for 2 or so days or whatever, where at the end, after like learning the basics, you take a skills evaluation and like a test or whatever, and then you take a written test. And if you pass, you can get a certificate to where if you go to the DMV, you don't necessarily, I'm pretty sure this is the case for most of them, you don't have to take the driving test portion at the DMV, but you can take the written test and pass and then get, the M on your license for having a motorcycle and you're legal to drive, because apparently a lot of people who ride motorcycles don't have their motorcycle license. What are y'all doing? Anyways, so I wanted to take this class because I love motorcycles, but I didn't really know how to, ride or drive one or whatever, and I didn't know the basics. So I was like, that's super important. And even the coaches said, like, people who have ridden for 20 plus years take classes like that and they learn and correct stuff that they've done for years. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start early and do things right. And it worked out. So the course itself that I took was 2 days, and it was at a community college, and in total I paid like $215 for it because it's the class, and then if you pass you get the certificate for it and stuff. So that's always really helpful. And then on top of that, there was like an e-course that was also basic stuff, but it was online, and that took like 5 hours, and it was sent at the very beginning of like the week that the class was supposed to happen. So I ended up finishing that really late at night before the class because I didn't have a lot of time to do it throughout the month. Like, it was sent the week of, and I was like, bruh, this is insane. I have work and life, but whatever, I did it. And I actually had to print out the certificate that I got for passing the online thing, and it basically says, like, e-package 1, e-course, 5 hours. It puts your name, the date, and then the certificate ID, and then it approved, like, for the MSF's, course or whatever, like, this certificate was not a license or, whatever. It's just like you saw and you learned the basics and you took the online thing. And then the actual class is where you do the writing, and that's so much fun. The first day, how it happened for me was I got to the college or whatever, and then we went into a classroom and talked for like 10, whatever, 15 minutes, introduced everyone in the class. There were 12 of us, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're on one parking lot and people are doing maneuvers, and some people don't know what they're doing, it's smart to not have that many people. Anyway, so there was 12 of us, like, we were kind of explaining, why am I taking this class? What is my name? Where am I? What is my experience level? And me, of course, I was like, I've never ridden one, whereas everyone else in the class, some people were about the same age, some people were like in their 50s or whatever, different age ranges, which was really cool. Different experience levels, of course. There was another guy in the class who had never ridden before, so it wasn't just me, which was nice. And then there was another girl there, so epic. Anyways, so once we actually got to the parking lot, the first literal, like, maybe half hour or whatever was like, point to this part on the motorcycle, identify what it is and, like, what it does to actually, make the motorcycle go vroom vroom, So it was kind of identifying the parts of it. We, like, sat down on it. We mounted up on the motorcycles, and it's like, okay, if you do this, if you turn on the ignition, if you do find C, where it's like fuel, ignition, neutral, one second. Fuel, ignition, neutral, engine, and then the C, if your bike has it, is like the choke or whatever, so that's not always relevant. But anyways, acronyms are so important. Literally half the class is like mental and then, driving around. Anyways, so the first portion was actually just like identify what is on the bike, and then we actually get on the bike. So a lot of the first day was a lot of, basic stuff because if you've never ridden before or if you've ridden before, it's always good to, review or learn. So a lot of what it was like going around the parking lot. We were kind of doing really soft, not super sharp turns. We did U-turns and stuff. We went around cones. We learned to short stop. We learned all the basic stuff, which is so important. We learned how to not stall, but I stalled multiple times, especially in the first day and the second day, which stalling is basically where like if you're letting the clutch go on your bike, which the clutch like allows power to the engine and then the throttle, makes the bike go faster or whatever. But if you let that go too fast, the engine go boo boo and you're stopped, So I learned that quite a lot. And by the second day, I learned how to not do that. So that was awesome. Anyways, so the first day was a lot of basics, which was really helpful because by the end of it, I was basically going around the parking lot with everyone else. We were kind of doing figure eights with different maneuvers, learning how to go from first gear into neutral, and then you immediately shift into second, which allows you to go faster. And we would go faster in straightaways, which is like a longer straight distance into curves. And you would have to, I'm saying this really fast, but anyways, it's like you're in first gear at the very beginning when you start out, and then you like upshift to get into second gear and you go fast, but then you have to learn how to like put on the brake and stuff and be careful with your clutch as you go around a curve and just learning stuff like that. Like that was a lot of the first day. However, what makes the first day very interesting is the fact that I was the only person in the class to fall off of their motorcycle. So the bike that I initially had was like a Beninin or what. I had never heard of this motorcycle in my life, but it was a very small motorcycle. It was a green and white one or whatever. I think I'll be able to find it and I'll put a picture on the screen. Anyways, very small bike. And I think what happened and what caused me to fall was I was going around a curve kind of, and rather than using the clutch, because when you pull in the clutch, that can like slow down the engine because you're not giving as much power to it or whatever. But I was doing that and also putting a lot of stuff on the brake, which kind of locked up the front wheel as far as I could tell. And then I was on the ground. So using this Lego as an example, I was basically like coming around a curve and like going like this, and then the bike went like that. That's what happened to me. Which this is a set I also made recently, and I think I actually made it accurately. So, So the result of me falling over essentially caused me to like scrape up my knee and get bruised. Not that bad really. And I think on the other side of my thigh, like the top of my thigh, I got it bruised and it's like raised and it doesn't feel good, but that's okay. But also, let me show you. So for this class, I had to bring certain stuff. It was kind of required, so you had to at least have like your own gloves. So I brought my riding gloves. I had these. You had to wear like over the ankle shoes or boots. I already had motorcycle boots, so I had these. So I brought these. For the class, you either had to wear a long sleeve shirt or a jacket, and I got to wear the jacket open because it was really freaking hot. So long sleeve shirt or jacket, and then, of course, helmet to protect your noggin. The other thing that was required for the course, and why I'm bringing it up, is because you had to have pants, like things that went literally to the bottom of your ankles. That would, be covered by the shoes or whatever. I have extra riding pants that would, essentially go over whatever pants you're wearing. So, extra protection. You can get like super fancy jeans that are made for riding that are more durable, because I wore normal jeans. And when I fell over, even though I was only maybe going like 10 miles per hour, if that, once I got up, I realized that my knee was starting to sting from, scraping it or whatever. Just from going that slow or whatever, let me find it. I freaking got a hole in my freaking jeans, dude. I felt so embarrassed because I fell over and then, I was okay. I was, grounding myself or whatever, recovering. And then, one of the coaches had to blow the whistle to like stop everyone else so that no one else like crashed into me or like everyone was just chill. We had to stop. So that was embarrassing, but I was okay. And then I was like, oh, maybe I'll just like, I can't continue the course because I fell. Like, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But then they got me on another bike, and the bike that I got is an older version of the Honda Rebel, which is essentially the exact same bike that I want to have and I want to ride in the future, but it was blue. So very cool, and it had flames. I'll put a picture on the screen of not the exact bike that I rode, but the exact bike, So that essentially was the first day, going through a lot of different techniques, learning how to short stop going through cones, learning how to turn in general, being careful with the throttle and the clutch, all of that crazy stuff. And then the second day was kind of similar. It was just building blocks in terms of the techniques. We went over like, obstacles to learn what to do if something comes on the road and you can't necessarily like avoid it, like a branch or something, like you have to kind of pick yourself up on the seat, to, not be knocked over or whatever. Stuff like that. U-turns, U-turns, like 2 U-turns, stuff like that. Just really fun stuff. And then like second to last thing was the skills evaluation, which was kind of going over certain techniques that would be on the actual test. And then we had the actual test, which there were 5 different sections. I messed up on like one of them, which was like, it was so upsetting because it's the kind of thing like once you start to get a hang of it, like even if you don't necessarily fail the whole thing, if you mess up slightly, you're like, dang it, because you know how to do better or not what to do. And the thing I messed up on was the U-turn portion, because what you literally have to do, you can't look, like you're not supposed to look at the ground while you're riding, but it was basically go forward to this cone, then do the U-turn where you turn your handlebars or whatever, and you're supposed to look back to see where you're going, which is so crazy when you start out because you're like, why would I want to look back when I need to see how I'm controlling the freaking handlebars? Anyways, so when I was doing that, I was freaking out. Like anytime you do a U-turn, or anytime I was doing a U-turn, I was kind of freaking out. And the tendency to put your foot down when you're starting to learn how to ride and do stuff like that is so hard. So when we were doing the test and I like was starting to turn around, I always needed to pick my speed up. That's what the freaking coaches told me. They were like, accelerate your freaking speed. You're going too slow, which is fine and understandable. I was just nervous. The whole time I did this class, I was nervous, but it was so fun. Anyways, so I was U-turning and I like started to put my foot down because I was mentally freaking out, because everyone else, like it's a 1-by-1 person thing. Like one person has to do each evaluation themselves. So everyone else is watching you and that's kind of scary. But anyway, so I did that and I put my foot down, but I kept going forward and I stopped and I went to the next one. That was the only one I messed up on, but it was so good because it was the short stop stuff. It was swerving around the cones, like kind of weaving rather, but then there was also another cone section where you literally had to swerve to the right because that's just what they wanted us to do. But that was like the second to last thing of the actual second day, like the actual riding test, which everyone freaking passed. Everyone in the class passed the driving portion and the written portion, because the written portion was 25 questions. I got 2 of them wrong, so I got a 92. Frick yeah. On the actual driving portion, I think I got 7 points, which you want 0 out of like 10 or something like that, and I got 7, which according to the coach that was like explaining everything, he was like, for a new rider, that's fantastic. And there were some people who were like, so I was like, cool, like even though I got points, everyone passed, which was awesome because a lot of the people in there had a lot of experience. Some of them, messed up on portions of the driving stuff. Some people messed up on portions of the written stuff. So you can have as much experience as you want in the freaking world, but the class is still really good to take. I'm sorry, I'm talking so fast, but it was so fun. So would I recommend taking an MSF course if you want to get into motorcycles? 100% yes, even if you've done it for years, or if you were like me and you've never touched a motorcycle, please do it, because it's like once you actually sit down, they're freaking super heavy. Like you don't think Well, I mean, like to me, it's like you look at a motorcycle and it's like that's just cool. You don't think about how freaking heavy it is. But you know, when you get that momentum, it's like riding a boat, like a motorcycle in terms of the balance portion. Like once you get going, that's when it picks up and you're fine. So that kind of makes sense. But if you've never done, like, especially done anything manual as far as like driving is concerned, learning the throttle no, the clutch and the throttle control, all of that is so important in doing so in like a safe environment, because doing it in a parking lot with other people who kind of knew what they were doing or whatever, that was very helpful. And everyone was so nice. I loved all the people that I learned with and everything. And the coaches were so nice. Of course, there were times where they were like, you need to do this, you need to improve on this, I want to see this. But they were also like super nice and super chill, which was very nice, because whenever I'm put under pressure or, like critiqued in, kind of a harsh way, I'm like, I'm gonna cry, I don't like confrontation. Anyways, they were both super chill, like older guys or whatever, so they were super nice. It was a very good environment. It was kind of hot both days, but that's okay. I'm just glad I didn't pass out despite wearing a helmet most of the time. Anyways, good experience, so 100% would recommend it. Even if you fall over, you can still pass the class. Because some of the instructors were saying like there were past students who would like mess up and then they just leave and then they, didn't take the course or whatever. So it's like, don't give up. So very fun, super cool. I just hope, because now I have the little certificate, which I think, like one of them, I have two things. Hold on. So I have two cards here. One of them is like the MSF course, which is basically just saying I can use this to kind of go to dealerships and like get discounts, but also, like with insurance and stuff, be like, I took course. I get discount on insurance because I know what I'm doing. And then the other course, it says like graduate on it or whatever. This I can take to like the DMV so they can see I took the course, and then, that helps validate things. But it's also super nice to have this, because this class was also another thing for me to be like, I signed up for this, I have to do this, whether or not I pass, I did it. And that's something I can say I did, and I passed it. So even though I was nervous, and there were many times where I was like, this is actually a lot to handle, I have no idea what's going on, I did it. So I proved to myself that I could do it. So if you're nervous about doing a class like that, or like this, you can do it. You can freaking do it, dude. It's so fun. Like once you starting the engine up sometimes was scary because I was like, I'm gonna freaking stall. But once you're going around, you're actually driving, it's so much fun. It's really not that, the like getting up and going, that's a little hard, but when you're going, it's so much fun. So like, I guess to end it or whatever, it was just so fun. I'm just really glad that I did it. And I can't wait to actually get a motorcycle, because that's the next thing is to go to the DMV and get my license. But the next thing after that is, get motorcycles. So we'll see. We'll see how that, like, when that happens. But either way, it's going to happen.